So good evening. We will continue our discussion from the previous class. So we have finished discussing about one aspect, which is the finite difference methods. Okay. So in the previous couple of classes, we have seen how to use the finite difference scheme to convert a PDE. So individual terms of the PDE. So in PDEs, you will have individual terms which are partial derivatives. How to convert them, whether that is first order or second order or mixed derivative, how to convert them into algebraic equations. That we have seen in the previous class. Okay, just let me open once for the benefit of discussion. So all this first order, forward, first order, backward difference, central difference, second order derivative, all of them we have seen. Mixed derivatives. Then we have discussed about explicit scheme and implicit scheme in the context of transient problems where the problem is dependent on time also. So if it is dependent on time, we have noted that there can be two methods of discretization. One is known as uh, explicit approach, where you are dependent, so you calculate the values based on all the old values, old time step values. So because everything is known directly, it can be calculated. On the other hand, we can use implicit or semi-implicit method. I will not go into the details. You can read them in the notes we have already discussed. We can uh, calculate based on the new time step values or a mixture of new and old time step values. If we do this, the equations, in the equations, the unknowns are themselves dependent on other unknowns. So they cannot be solved directly. So what happens is that you have a set of equations and set of unknowns. So if you have n points, so you will have n unknowns and n equations. So we have to simultaneously solve this n equations and n unknowns to get their values. Okay. In each equation, one unknown is dependent on two more unknowns. So you cannot solve them from one equation. You have to solve n equations and n unknowns together. Okay. So for implicit and semi-implicit method, that is the case. And there are advantages and disadvantages of both methods that also we have seen. Okay. So today we will see how to actually solve these equations, simultaneous equations of simultaneous algebraic equations. Okay. So I will just quickly give a background why this is required again. So for any implicit scheme, I hope you can see the screen. Numerical solution of linear algebraic equations.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So for any implicit scheme, what we have discussed previously, equations form in this pattern. Okay. So if I have a grid pattern like this, what I am showing here, say, so it is a 1D transient problem. So the x direction is this direction, the horizontal direction, and the y direction is the vertical direction. Okay. In this schematic. So along the x direction, we have divided the domain into certain number of grid points or nodes. So these indices of these nodes are given by I. Okay, so this first point is I equal to 1, I equal to 2, like this. We already know this, I am just repeating for the sake of completeness. I equal to 1, I equal to 2, I equal to 3, like this. Up to say n number of points are there, I equal to n. At any point in between, the general index is I. Okay, so this point is I, where I can have some value. So I can be 36 or 35, whatever value. Here I is 5. Okay. The next point is I plus 1 and the previous one is I minus 1. Okay. So these points we can also consider. So this is the first time step. Okay. Means at time t equal to 0, where the initial condition is known. Then we will have second time step after our single time step. Say after say 0.1 seconds or whatever is the time step. We can draw another line where again we will have n points for the variation along the x. Okay, new variation along the x. Like this, if we proceed with time, this is known as time marching, as we have discussed. So at any time step, general time step, kth time step, the values are given along this line. Okay, so this point I have not drawn the point here. This point I missed. Okay, so this will be I equal to 1, I equal to 2, I equal to 3, like this. So this is the general I point. Next point is I plus 1 and previous point is I minus 1. Excuse me. So the values here are known from the previous calculation. Okay, so temperature, if it is temperature, if the unknown variable is temperature, this is Ti minus 1k, Tik and Ti plus 1k. These values are known. We want to find out for the next time step all the values, all the n values. Okay, so for the ith grid point, it will be Tik plus 1. This will be Ti plus 1, k plus 1. This will be Ti minus 1, k plus 1. Similarly, all the other values can be written. The first value is T1 k plus 1. Okay, second value is T2 k plus 1, like this. So in general, for a problem of this sort, uh, using any implicit scheme, means implicit means implicit or semi-implicit. If you do it, you will see that the equations form having this following pattern. Okay, for ith grid point, it has its neighboring values also in the equation. So ai ti minus 1 k plus 1, bi ti k plus 1 plus ci ti plus 1 k plus 1 is equal to ki. Okay, this is the general pattern of equations forming. You can see that if you try to derive the equation, say if you derive the equation for semi implicit or fully implicit, you will see that the I plus 1 k plus 1 term, I k plus 1 term and I minus 1 k plus 1 term will be there in addition to any source term or anything else that is present. Okay. So three terms will be there, I minus 1 term, I term and I plus 1 term. And because we are discretizing this for the ith grid, all the coefficients I am writing with the subscript I. So this, for the ith grid discretization, the coefficient of Ti minus 1 is Ai. For the coefficient of Ti is Bi. Coefficient of Ti plus 1 is Ci. Okay. And Ki is all the other known terms together. This is the general form of the equation. This is a linear algebraic equation. Okay. Algebraic equation, basically. You don't have any derivatives. So you have three unknowns in this equation, one equation and three unknowns. Okay. So for all the grid points, we can form equations of this point, of this form. So because there are n unknowns, we will be forming n equations for each unknown, for each grid point. Sorry, because there are n grid points, we will be forming n equations. For each grid point, we will have one equation starting from n equal to 1. So there will be one equation for this, one equation for this, one equation for this, like this. Okay. If the boundary conditions are known, temperatures are directly known here, then you will have n minus 2 equations and n minus 2 unknowns. Otherwise, n equations and n unknowns. Up to this point, is it clear, or does anyone have any doubt why there are n unknowns and n equations? Okay. So these n unknowns are the temperature values at the k plus 1 at time step. Okay. We want to solve them to find the values. And the known values can all put together is given in this term ki. This may have the old temperature values, previous time step temperature value, as well as any source term values. And the coefficients are known. Coefficients are generally functions of alpha, delta x, delta t, like this. Again, if you go back to the equation, you will see that alpha, delta x square, these are all known values from the discretization. So coefficients will come in the form of these values. Okay. Yeah, I suggest that you practice this. You try to derive a fully implicit scheme. Okay, based on the fully explicit scheme that I have shown, you try to derive a fully implicit scheme for the 1D transient heat conduction problem. So as a practice, I can also give this as assignment, but anyway, you can just try to solve it. So you will find that it is of this form. Okay. So all these n equations can be written in matrix form now. Okay. So I have the diagram open here for reference. All the n equations can be written in matrix form. How? So what is the first equation? First equation is for Ti is equal to 1. Okay. I is equal to 1. So if I is equal to 1, what is I minus 1? What will be the coefficient of I minus 1? What will be the value of Ai? If I is equal to 1, Is there any I minus 1 point for I equal to 1? Answers. So you guys are not listening or what? Students are there. What will be the coefficient AI for I is equal to 1? What is the I equal to 1 point? You have understood, right? First point. So is there any I minus 1 point?
No, sir.
So then AI has to be equal to what? Because there is no I minus 1 point, we will not be able to define also any term like this. So AI has to be 0. Okay. This term has to be absent. Basically, this term is not there for I equal to 1 because there is nothing on the left side. Okay. So for I equal to 1, the equation is B1 T1 K plus 1 plus C1 T2 K plus 1 is equal to K1. Is it clear? B1 T1 K plus 1 plus C1 T2 K plus 1 is equal to capital K1. Okay. So basically the I plus I equal to 1 value depends on its right neighbor value. Okay. Next value if it is unknown. So B1, so I can write this in this matrix form. Okay. I have these grids also here open and equation for reference. B1 T1 K plus 1 plus C1 T2 K plus 1 plus all the other 0 into T3 K plus 1, 0 into T4 K plus 1, 0 into, so n number, so n minus 2 number of zeros are present here. All these terms are 0 is equal to K1. This is the matrix form. So in the matrix form, you have to multiply this row by this column, okay, to get this value. Second row multiplied by the entire column gives you the second value. Third row multiplied by the entire column gives you the third value. Okay. So B1 T1 K plus 1 plus C1 T2 K plus 1 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 like this is equal to K1. So this is the first equation. Is it clear to everyone?
Yes.
Okay. What is the second equation by looking at this? For the second I equal to 2 point. A2 T1 K plus 1. Okay, A2 T1 K plus 1. Left neighboring point is T1. T1 K plus 1 plus B2 T2 K plus 1 plus C2 T3 K plus 1. So for the I equal to 2 point, the two unknowns, three unknowns are itself and its two neighboring points. C2 T2 T3 K plus 1 equal to K2. Okay, so that is again represented in this form. A2 T1 K plus 1 plus B2 T2 K plus 1 plus C2 T3 K plus 1 plus all the other terms are 0 plus 0 0 0 0 0 equal to K2. Like this we can continue. Okay. Third equation will be 0 into T1 K plus 1. For the third equation I equal to 3, T1 does not come into picture. Okay. For I equal to T3, the first term is A3 T2 K plus 1. Second term is B3 T3 K plus 1. Third term is C3 T4 K plus 1. So only unknowns are T2, T3 and T4. Okay, so only these three terms are there in the equation for the third point. Okay, so first term is 0. 0 into T1 K plus 1 plus A3 into T2 K plus 1 plus B3 into T3 K plus 1 plus C3 into T4 K plus 1 plus all the other terms are 0. This gives us, this is equal to K3. Like this, for n equations we can write the matrix form. Okay, so this matrix has a size of n by n. Okay, it has n by n elements. This vector, column vector, has n elements, and this column vector also has n elements. So for example, last but one equation means for n minus 1 grid point, I can write the equation as a n minus 1 t n minus 2, okay, k plus 1 plus b n minus 1 t n minus 1 k plus 1 plus c n minus 1 t n k plus 1 is equal to k n minus 1. And for the last grid point, I can write an tn minus 1 k plus 1 plus bn tn k plus 1 plus cn tn plus 1 k plus 1. What will be the value of cn?
0.
because there is no Tn plus 1 term. Okay, so Cn is 0. There is no Cn. Okay, in the equation. So this form, matrix form, in this matrix form, we can write all the n equations and n unknown together. So this matrix is the unknown matrix. It has n unknowns, T1, T2, T3, T4 at k plus 1 at time step. This K1, K2, K3, K4, these are all known values. And this B1, A1, B1, C1, A2, B2, C2, these are all known values. Okay. These are based on the known parameters like delta X, delta Y, delta 3, then alpha means diffusivity, conductivity, all based on discretization parameters. These are also known. So only unknown is this n unknowns. Okay. So we have n equations and n unknowns. Now we have to solve this. So solving n equations and n unknowns, there are different processes. So our aim in this discussion is to see a few processes of solving these types of equations, because we will always get this type of equations in our CFD problems if you solve implicitly. How to solve this type of equations, that is what interests us. That is what interests us. Okay. There are other simpler methods which we will not discuss. Very general mathematical methods like Gaussian elimination. You can read about those, but that is not part of our course. We will not discuss. But there are methods which are present for like matrix inversion, which can be used. Okay. So now this equation can be written in this form. All the coefficient together is the coefficient matrix A. It's an n by n matrix into this T vector, which is an n sized vector. Okay, A into T is equal to K. So I can solve this equation if I do a matrix inversion. So I can write A inverse A T is equal to A inverse K. So A inverse A is the identity matrix. So T will become equal to A inverse of K. Okay, A inverse K. T is equal to A inverse K. Is it clear to everyone? T is equal to A inverse K. Okay. So because K and A inverse both can be calculated because A is known, we can find the value of T. In what case we will not be able to find the value of T from this matrix? A inverse K. If we cannot calculate A inverse, determinant is 0. Okay. Otherwise, we will be able to solve it and find it. So in some software programs like MATLAB, there are direct tools for matrix inversion. You don't have to do also anything. You can just write what is the value of A and what is the value of K, and you will be able to directly find in one step A inverse K. Okay. But in general, MATLAB will be using internally some sort of algorithm, efficient algorithm for this matrix inversion. There are a lot of algorithms for matrix inversion. You can take a look, like Gaussian elimination, if you want to read. Okay, but in this course, we are not going to study that. So what is the important thing that we can get from it is that if we can invert this matrix, we will be able to solve the problem always. Okay, if the matrix is invertible. Now, because this matrix has a certain form, okay, what is the form? Peculiar form of this matrix? It has only 3 values for each row, except the first and last row. It has only 3 values for each row. This is known as a tri-diagonal matrix. Okay, means there are 3 diagonals. All the other values are 0. This is a special type of matrix. This is a very sparse matrix. Sparse means very less number of values are present. Other values are 0. Okay. Because it is such a sparse matrix and only the diagonal values are present, instead of typical methods of matrix inversion, there are some special methods which we can use to solve this problem much faster. Okay, so that is what we are going to check. Okay, so the coefficient matrix A is a tridiagonal matrix. Values of the coefficients already I have discussed, depends on conductivity, delta X, delta T, etc. This can be solved by different methods such as matrix inversion. Matrix inversion itself can be done using Gaussian elimination, okay, or any other way of matrix inversion. Or we can use something which is called as Thomas algorithm, which we are going to study, which is also known as tridiagonal matrix algorithm or TDMA. Okay, so this is one way of solving this. These are known as direct methods. There are also indirect methods whereby iterating means multiple iterations. In one iteration we go towards the solution, and in another iteration we go towards the solution. We can solve the equations. Okay. So we can use also iterative methods. So we can use either direct methods like Gaussian elimination or tridiagonal matrix algorithm, or iterative methods. We will study all these iterative methods: Jacobi method, Gauss-Seidel method, and line by line TDMA method. Okay. So let us see first what is the tridiagonal matrix algorithm or the direct method, and I will discuss why this is very important. Okay, we will see that this is very fast as compared to other types. So direct method, tridiagonal matrix algorithm. Okay, it is also known as Thomas algorithm, based on the person who actually first derived this method. This is suitable for 1D problems. For 2D or 3D problems, 1D transient problems, for 2D or 3D problems, we need to modify the. So not only 1D transient means 1D transient as well as steady state problem, but for 2D or 3D problems, we need to modify this algorithm, and it will not remain a direct method, it will become an iterative method, which we will study later on in the next class, which is known as line by line tridiagonal matrix algorithm. Okay. So in general, what is the tridiagonal matrix algorithm? Let us try to understand today. Okay. Any questions up to this point? No questions. Okay. So let us write a general discretized equation. The way we derive after an implicit or any type of method. You will see later that in finite volume method also. Finite volume we will start discussing in the next week. Okay. So we will see that in the finite volume method also we get similar type of equation as finite difference. So it is not up to the method. Discretization method may be finite difference or finite volume. So those are only for discretizing and getting this type of equation. Once this type of equation is obtained, we can use the same algorithms. Okay, for whether it is finite difference or finite volume, it does not matter. Once we get an equation, n algebraic equations and n unknowns, we can use the same algorithm like the TDMA method for solving the equations. Okay. Please switch off my mic. Your mic is on. So ultimately, we have n equations, n unknowns. We want to solve those n equations. That is our target. Okay. And the peculiar nature of the equation is that the ith value depends only on the I plus 1 and I minus 1 value. Means that the equations are of a tridiagonal nature. Only three diagonals are present. Okay. So I can write the equations in this form. For any point, ith point, aiti is equal to biti plus 1 plus citi minus 1. These are small coefficients. Okay. These are just similar to this one, negative of this. Okay. So aiti is equal to biti plus 1 plus citi minus 1 plus di. Okay. Where I varies from 1 to n. Okay. For any grid point I can write the equation in this form. Aiti is equal to biti plus 1 plus citi minus 1 plus di. Okay. Whether it is a transient problem or a steady state problem or finite difference or finite volume, it does not matter. Ultimately, if it is a 1D problem, the equation will come in this form. Okay. If this is a 2D problem, then we will also have two more variables for the z direction. But because it's a 1D problem, any grid point value depends on its two neighboring grid point values. Okay. So it will have two neighboring grid point values. And for I equal to 1, what is the value of C1? C1 has to be 0 because there is no Ti minus 1, right? C1 has to be. This A, B, and C are not this A, B, and C. Okay, don't confuse with here. So I have used small letters here. Okay. So C1 equal to 0 because there is no Ti minus 1 for I equal to 1. Similarly, for I equal to n, because there is no Tn plus 1, Bn also has to be equal to 0. Okay. Otherwise, all the other equations have all the three variables ai, bi, and ci, and also di is present. Okay. Now this TDMA can be written in multiple steps, as we will see in the algorithm. It involves something known as forward elimination and then backward substitution. Okay. Once I go through the algorithm, then again we will revisit so that if there is any confusion, it can be clear. Because sometimes there can be confusion. So we will just let us first try to understand what is the algorithm. Okay. We will not do a matrix inversion. Okay, for this. We could have solved this problem using matrix inversion, but instead of matrix inversion, we will use a better method, this TDMA. What is this? Let us try to understand. Say we can represent Ti as pi ti plus 1 plus qi. Okay. Say it can be represented. Say any value, any variable I can be represented in terms of the I plus 1 value and some coefficients pi ti plus 1 plus qi. Okay. We are assuming that this is possible. Okay. It is not given to us. This equation is not given to us. Our equation is of this form where both ti plus 1 and ti minus 1 is present. But we are assuming that the equation can be written in this form. Ti is equal to pi ti plus 1 plus qi. Okay. When can it be written? After we have already performed the previous step, we have found that ti minus 1 is equal to pi minus 1 ti plus qi minus 1. The previous step of this means the I minus 1 step we have already done. And the I minus 1 step gives us ti minus 1 equal to pi minus 1 ti plus qi minus 1. Say this is already found. Okay, we are assuming this is already found, and if this is known, we will be able to find the next one. Okay. Now let us try to correlate this discussion with the previously actual equations. Okay. So our actual equation is aiti equal to biti plus 1 plus citi minus 1 plus di. Okay. So this ti minus 1 we are going to replace by this expression ti minus 1 equal to pi minus 1 ti plus qi minus 1. Why I am going to replace this equation? Because I am assuming that we have already solved this and we have found what is pi minus 1 and qi minus 1. Okay. So we have already found the coefficients pi minus 1 and qi minus 1. And we are trying to find the coefficients pi and qi. Okay, that is our target. So we can write this equation as aiti plus equal to biti plus 1 plus ci. Instead of ti minus 1, we will be replacing it by pi minus 1 ti plus qi minus 1. Okay. Because that is what we get from this. Plus di is also already there, so plus di. Okay. Now if I take all the ti terms together, I have one term ai minus ci pi minus 1. So this additional term. This I take to the left hand side. So ai minus ci pi minus 1 ti is equal to, so the all the ti plus 1 is, there is a single ti plus 1 term, biti plus 1 plus all the other terms together, ci qi minus 1 plus di. Okay, this I also put together. Okay. Now I divide both sides by ai ci pi minus 1. Okay, so what we get is ti is equal to bi by ai minus ci pi minus 1 ti plus 1 plus ci qi minus 1 plus di by this term ai minus ci pi minus 1. Okay, this is exactly of the form what we have discussed previously. Ti is equal to pi ti plus 1 plus qi. Okay, where what is the value of capital Pi? Capital Pi is equal to bi divided by ai minus ci pi minus 1. Okay, capital Pi we have just derived now is equal to bi by ai minus ci pi minus 1. Okay, and what is the value of capital Qi? Capital Qi is equal to ci qi minus 1 plus di divided by ai minus ci pi minus 1. Okay, so this we have derived. So what we know from this equation is that if somehow we can find the value of pi minus 1, okay, and qi minus 1, ai bi ci di are already known. Ai bi ci di are already known after discretization. If we can find the value of pi and qi minus 1, pi minus 1 and qi minus 1, we will be able to find the value of pi and qi. And in the next step, if we can find the value of pi and qi, in the next step, we will be able to find the value of next I. Okay. So for I equal to 1, if I know the equation values, sorry, I equal to 2, then I will be able to find for I equal to 3, I equal to 4, I equal to 5, just by using this type of relation. Okay. So for say I equal to 10, you know the value. So for I equal to 11, you will be able to find out what is P11 and Q11 because P10 and Q10 are known to you, like an induction problem somewhat. Okay, it is possible. So now we have to see what is the algorithm for finding this. How should we proceed, in what direction? Okay, so as I was saying, there is forward elimination and backward substitution. Let us try to understand this algorithm. Okay, we will keep this open, these equations open here. Okay, in case you need to refer to this, This is the general equation, general discretized equation. AITI equal to BITI plus 1 plus CITI minus 1 plus DI. And this is our steps. PI is equal to BI minus CI minus 1, steps for proceeding. And QI is equal to CI minus 1 plus DI divided by AI minus CI minus 1. In case we know the previous ith value. Okay. So we will start from I equal to 1. Okay. We will start from I equal to 1. What was the value of CI for I equal to 1? We have found that for I equal to 1, CI is 0. Means C1 is 0. Why? Because there is no Ty minus 1. There is no Ti minus 1. So C1 is 0. Here it is written also. I don't have to go back. So only terms that are present are A1, B1 and D1. Okay. So if I write this equation, P1, because C1 is 0, P1 is equal to B1 by A1 minus 0. P1 equal to B1 by A1 minus 0. So B1 by A1. And Q1 equal to, so again 0 plus D1 divided by A1 minus 0. So D1 by A1. Okay. So is P1 and Q1 known to us? Can we calculate P1 and Q1? We can calculate, right? Because A1, B1 and D1 are known after discretization. So P1 and Q1 are known. Okay. We can calculate P1 and Q1 based on A1, B1 and D1. Up to this point, is there any confusion? I hope it is clear. If you are not able to understand something, please let me know. Okay, I will repeat. There is no issue. So after getting the value of P1 and Q1, what are we going to do next? What is happening? Some sound is coming. Let me just check. It's all right. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
What will be the next step? Now it is easy. You can see from this equation that once you know P1 and Q1, we can easily find P2 and Q2 because B2, A2, C2 and D2 will be known to us from discretization, and P1 and Q1 are known. All these I minus 1 terms are known. P1 and Q1 are known. So we can easily find P2 and Q2. Okay. Once we find P2 and Q2, what are we going to do next? We will find P3 and Q3. Then we will find P4 and Q4. Like this, we will continue up to what point? What is the last value that we are going to find? Answers?
PN.
Pn and Qn. Okay. We'll see whether Pn exists or not. But theoretically, Pn and Qn will be the last value, should be the last value. Okay. So now this is known as marching, forward elimination, okay, or forward marching. March forward in I. For example, for I equal to 2, I have already described P2 is equal to. So this equation you have to use B2 by A2 minus C2 P1. P1 we have already calculated, remember? And Q2 is equal to C2 Q1. Q1 is also already calculated plus D2 divided by A2 minus C2 P1. P1 is also known. So all these are known. So P2 and Q2 we have calculated. As all the values are known, P2 and Q2 can be calculated. Then we will calculate P3 and Q3, P4 and Q4 like this. So for any intermediate value I, we will calculate Pi is equal to Bi by Ai minus Ci Pi minus 1, and Qi is equal to Ci Qi minus 1 plus Di by Ai minus Ci Pi minus 1. As Pi minus 1 and Qi minus 1 are already known from previous calculation, Pi and Qi can be directly calculated. Okay. This is known as forward elimination, as I have described. Okay. So once you have found, so what is known after the entire marching up to n? All the values of Pn and Pi and Qi are known. Okay. All the values of Pi and Qi are known. What is the advantage of this? If somehow we can find one value of t, we will be able to find all the other values of t. That is what we are going to see next. Okay. Let me explain first, then you can ask questions. So we will continue till I equal to n. Okay. For I equal to n, what is the Bn value? We have discussed it is equal to 0 because there is no Tn plus 1. So if Bn is 0, what is the value of Pn? 0. Okay. Because Bn is 0, Pn also has to be 0. So there is no Pn. What is the value of Qn? Cn, Qn minus 1 plus Dn divided by n minus, it should be minus. Okay. Right. So this should be minus. Okay, please note that this is minus. What is this? How can I remove this? Cn Qn minus 1 plus Dn divided by n minus Cn Pn minus 1. So Qn can be calculated because Qn minus 1 and Pn minus 1 is known from previous calculation. Okay. So Qn is known. If Qn is known and Pn is equal to 0, okay. Now let us come back to this equation. Qn is known and Pn is equal to 0. So replacing in this equation, what do you get? For I equal to n, Tn is equal to 0 plus Qn. Okay. So what is the value of Tn?
Qn.
It is Qn, and Qn we have already calculated. So now we know what is the value of Tn. Okay, because we have already calculated Qn, we already know what is the value of Tn. So for I is equal to n, Pn equal to 0, and replacing in this equation 0 plus Qn, Tn equal to 0 plus Qn. So Tn equal to Qn. Qn we have already calculated from forward elimination. So now we have also calculated what is Tn. The last temperature value we have calculated. Now we will go in a backward direction. Okay. Forward elimination, and what was the other step name? Backward substitution. Okay. Now we will do backward substitution. How to do this backward substitution? March backward in I. Okay. We have this equation. Ti is equal to Pi Ti plus 1 Qi. Now for I is equal to n, we already know. So for I is equal to n minus 1, what will be the equation? Tn minus 1 is equal to Pn minus 1 Tn plus Qn minus 1. Do we know all the values on the right hand side? Pn minus 1 and Qn minus 1 and Tn?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Because we have already calculated Pn, all the P values we have calculated, all the Q values we have calculated during forward elimination. Okay. So all the P values and Q values are known. So Pn minus 1 is known, Qn minus 1 is known to us. And we have found what is Tn. So we will find what is Tn minus 1. Once we find what is Tn minus 1, we will go to I equal to n minus 2. So Tn minus 2 is equal to Pn minus 2 into Tn minus 1 plus Qn minus 2. Again, all the values will be known because just now we have calculated Tn minus 1. So we will be able to find Tn minus 2. Next, we will find Tn minus 3. Next, Tn minus 4 up to T1. Okay. So this marching backward in I is known as backward substitution. Okay. So once you do the backward substitution, all the values of T will be known from n to 1. Okay. So this method is known as tri-diagonal matrix algorithm or Thomas algorithm, and is very useful for 1D problems. Okay. The main features of this is that iterations are not required for this. Directly you can calculate based on forward marching and backward substitution. And the number of steps that are required. Okay, number of steps. So if you have n number of unknowns, the number of steps is a function of n. Okay. Number of operations or number of steps is a function of n. In other methods such as Gaussian elimination or other types of matrix inversion method, which have been developed for general matrices, which are not tridiagonal, which are normal matrices. The number of operations is proportional to n to the power 3, n cube. Okay, but in this case, the number of operations is proportional to n. So for example, it is of the order, it is not exactly equal to n, it is of the order of n. Okay, so if say for 100 grid points, if I have 500 operations, what will be the number of operations for 1000 grid points? 100 grid points, 500 operations, 500 calculation steps. For 1000 grid points, it will be linearly proportional. So if 100 grid points, 500 iteration, sorry, calculations, what will be the value for 1000 grid points? How many calculations are required? What has happened to you guys? 5000 calculations will be required, right? Just linearly it is increasing.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, yes. So if for 100 grid points, our time requirement is 100 second for 1000 or say 1 minute. 100 grid points take 1 minute. Okay. For 1000 grid points, what will be the time requirement?
10 minutes.
10 minutes, correct. It will take 10 minutes. Okay. Linearly it will scale. On the other hand, for other types of operations, methods like Gaussian eliminations, which we have not discussed because this is very inefficient, but it is needed in other cases where we don't have tri-diagonal matrix. If the matrix has lot of values, then you cannot use obviously Thomas algorithm. It is only useful when you have this type of equation, tri-diagonal arrangement. Otherwise, it is not useful. You cannot use it. So if it is non-tri-diagonal, or if you want to use for a tri-diagonal matrix also, this Gaussian elimination, the number of steps varies as n to the power 3. So say for one, again for 100 grid points, if it takes 1 minute, what will be the time required for 1000 grid points for Gaussian elimination? 100 grid points take 1 minute. 1000 grid points will take how much minutes? Hundred grid points, say the number of operations is 500. What will be the number of operations for 1000 grid points? 5 into come on, this is very easy. Or you can just say what is the time required. Okay. Number of operations increasing cubically. So I have 10 times more grid points. So how many more steps will be there if the number of grid points increases 10 times? So instead of 500 number of calculations, what will be the number of calculations? Previously it was, or say it was some number of calculations, okay, 5000 number of calculations were there, whatever. So what will be the time increase? 10 times if the grid increases.
So it will increase by 1000 times.
1000 times it will increase, correct. Answer quickly, okay, these are very trivial questions. So 1000 times, so it will take 1000 minutes for the, so for 100 grid points, if both the methods take 1 minute, for 1000 grid points, one method will take 10 minutes, another method will take 1000 minutes. Okay, you can imagine the discrepancy in time required for large grid point, large number of grid points. Okay, so it is not possible this Gaussian elimination for large number of grid points. So that's why this TDMA is very useful. Okay, tri-diagonal matrix algorithm is very useful for 1D problems. Okay, and we have already seen what is the algorithm for that. Okay, any 1D problem, we will see that the equations finally are of this form. Okay, whether it is finite difference, later we will study about finite volume method also. There also we'll see that the equation is of this form. Okay, whatever is the method, finally we can use TDMA to solve the equation if it is a 1D problem. Okay, unless it is an explicit problem. Explicit method, directly we can solve. We even don't have to solve n equations and n unknowns. Each unknown can be separately solved. But for all other methods, we have n equations and n unknowns, and we can use this. Or otherwise, you can use some matrix inversion like Gaussian elimination, but it will be very time consuming. Okay. I will take a break here and we will continue this discussion. After the break, we will see the other types of methods, iterative methods. Okay. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You can see the screen also, right?
Yes, sir.
Any questions on the previous material, TDMA? Please go through this. These are very important for CFD applications. Okay. Many of the software and most of the codes that we write or anybody uses for CFD, many of them uses TDMA, tridiagonal matrix algorithm, or a modified version, which we will study later on, line by line TDMA for 2D or 3D problems. Okay. So now we will go. So we have seen the direct method. Direct method means that in one go you are calculating all the value of the n unknowns. Okay, n unknown values you are calculating in one go. Okay, there is only one iteration. So after one set of calculation you have the values. So we will see a few indirect methods which are known as iterative methods. Okay, iterative method means you directly do not calculate the values in one iteration, means after one step you go towards an approximate value which is near to the actual value but not exactly equal. Then after next step you go towards more towards the correct value. After next step you go more towards the correct value. So step by step you are gradually moving towards the correct value. Okay. So after say 20 or 30 or whatever is the number of steps, after your desired accuracy, you say that okay, now the solution is sufficiently accurate. I don't need further iterations. So you stop at that point. Okay. So these methods we will see. Then it will be more clear. So iterative methods are very suitable for 2D and 3D problems because in 2D and 3D, direct solution is very difficult. Why is it difficult? One is that you cannot use TDMA. So if you want to use, you have to use matrix inversion like Gaussian elimination. What will be the difficulty with that? Direct matrix inversion for 2D or 3D problems. Why direct methods are very difficult for 2D or 3D problems? Can anyone say based on our discussion today? No idea. You guys are not participating at all in the class, which is quite disappointing. Previous batch used to participate a lot. A lot of questions were asked and there was very healthy discussion. I am very happy to answer questions. You should be asking a lot of questions. Last year also I have taken the CFD course. Student number was less, 20 students, but they used to ask huge number of questions and also used to give some very good insights. What will be the difficulty of using direct method for a 2D or 3D problem? What is the main difference for 2D or 3D problem as compared to 1D problem?
Number of iterations,
Not iterations, number of grid points will be very high.
grid points.
Number of grid points will be very high. Okay. So say if for a 1D problem, if I have 100 grid points, for similar 2D problem, I will have 100 by 100. So 10,000 grid points. And for a 3D problem, I will have 100 by 100 by 100. So 1 million grid points. Okay. So if for 100 grid points, it was taking 1 minute to solve for the 1D problem. For 3D problem, how much time it will take using Gaussian elimination? Can anyone say? If for 1D problem, it was taking 1 minute to solve. For the 3D problem, how much time it will take to solve?
1,000 minutes.
No. For the 3D problem, how much is the number of grid points? 1D problem is 100 grid points. So 3D problems, how many grid points? If it is a equivalent problem. In all directions, you are dividing by 100. So what will be the number of grid points?
10,000.
10,000 minutes.
No, not 10,000. What will be
Lakh.
the number of grid points?
1 million, sir. 10.
1 million grid points. Correct.
Yes, sir.
So instead of 100, we have 1 million grid points. So how much time increase will be there?
So 10,000, like 10 to the power
10,000 times.
Not 10,000 times. 10,000 times means linearly increasing. It is not linearly increasing. Gaussian elimination, we have established it is increasing n cube times. Number of grid points has increased by 10,000. So time will increase by
10,000
10
cube.
to the power 12.
10,000 cube, 10 to the power 12.
12.
Yeah, 12.
Huge amount, 1 trillion minutes. Means unrealistic. It's a huge number. Okay. So actually, obviously, for 1D, 100 grid points, it will not take 1 minute. It will take 10 to the power something minus something second. This 0.0001 second or something like that. So for 2D or 3D also it is feasible, but it will take a much larger amount of time. So it is not very suitable. You can see what is the increase, right? Mind-boggling. 1 trillion minutes is a huge amount of time. What is the number of minutes in a typical day? Does anyone know? Roughly. What is the number of seconds in a day? This is very common question.
86,000.
86,400, right? So number of minutes roughly is around 1400. Okay, 1400 something. So around 1440, I think. Okay, 24 into 60. So let us say that 1000 minutes in a day. So how many days will be it? 1 trillion. So 100 million days, or approximately 3 lakh years. Okay, 0.3 million years. So this is type of scale that we are getting. Okay, obviously it is not at all possible. Okay. So we will have to use iterative methods for most cases for 2D or 3D problems. Okay. The other option that was present to us, where the scale was only linearly scaling, TDMA, cannot be used for 2D or 3D problems. Can you say why it cannot be used for 2D or 3D problems? Based on our discussion today, you have to think a little bit. Okay.
Sir,
Just
is it
yes.
because we cannot term them linearly as we have done with P and Q?
We can do it linearly, but not with P and Q. But we can write this sort of equation that you are seeing here. But will the three unknowns be sufficient for a 2D case? All the neighboring points are required. Okay. So there will be terms like j plus 1 and j minus 1. So there will be 5 terms in 2D and 7 terms in 3D. Okay, 5 terms in 2D and 7 terms in 3D. So the main point and its neighboring points. Okay. So if there are 5 terms, it becomes a pentadiagonal matrix instead of tridiagonal matrix. And we cannot use tridiagonal matrix algorithm because that is only valid for tridiagonal matrix. Pentadiagonal matrix, we cannot use obviously tridiagonal matrix algorithm. We can use somewhat more efficient methods, but TDMA is not possible. Okay. So TDMA cannot be used, and other direct methods such as Gaussian elimination are painfully slow. Okay. It is painfully slow, extremely slow. So we need to use some iterative methods. So let us see some of these iterative methods in a simpler form. Okay. Because this is a beginning course, a beginner level course, we will not go into too much detail, but I will give you a feel about the different methods of solving the equation, so that if you try to implement a small problem for your BTP or some other projects, you are able to do it. Okay. So let us consider 2 equations and 2 unknowns. Instead of n equations and n unknowns, let us consider 2 equations and 2 unknowns. So first method we are going to consider is Jacobi method. So these two I have just written 2 random equations, 2x1 plus x2. x1 and x2 are the unknowns. Okay, x1 and x2 are the unknowns. 2x1 plus x2 equal to 6 and x1 plus 3x2 is equal to 13. Okay, what is the correct value of x1 and x2? Directly if you solve, you will find, right, correct value. Very quickly you have to answer these questions. If you are appearing for exams like CAT or other exams, you have very limited time. Within 30 seconds you have to answer a question. So you have to practice. You have to use your calculating power. Very quickly you have to calculate these things. Directly, all just by looking at the equation, you should be able to tell. Yes?
x1 x2
Correct. Just by looking at the equation, I can tell that x1, if it is 1, 2 into 1 plus 4 is 6, and 1 plus 3 into 4 is 13. Okay. I don't have to solve. If I try to solve the entire thing, it will take too much time for a competitive exam. Just by looking, I should be able to grasp that. Okay. So, correct answers are 1 and 4, right? So, we want to see how to do this calculation iteratively. What is the Jacobi method for iteration? Okay. So, for each equation, we derive a equation for iteration. Okay. So, for example, x1 I can write as 6 minus x2 by 2, and x2 I can write as 13 minus x1 by 3. Okay. So, if I know the previous iteration value, if k is the number of iteration, if I know the k minus 1th iteration value, say after some point I know the k minus 1th iteration value, I can find the kth iteration value from these equations. Okay. So, these equations can be written as x1k, where x1k is unknown, is equal to 6 minus x2k minus 1, where k minus 1 is the previous iteration value. Previous iteration value we have already calculated, okay, by 2. Similarly, x2k is equal to 13 minus x1k minus 1 by 3. Okay. So, because x1 and x2k minus 1s are known, we can find the kth iteration value. Once the kth iteration value will be known, what we will do? We will find k plus 1th iteration value. So, accordingly, we will march along in k direction. Okay, one iteration, second iteration, third iteration, until we get more and more accurate value. How will we know that we have reached the correct value? Because we don't know the exact correct solution, right? In this case, you know, but in a real problem, obviously, you are trying to find the correct solution. You will not be knowing the correct solution. So, how will you know that you have reached the correct value? Or when will you say that you have reached the correct value? Can you think about something?
error tending to 0.
Error. What is the error? How will you find the error? Means how do you know what is the error?
Sir, like from the theoretical solution, if we
You don't know the theoretical solution, right? That is the entire point. If I know the theoretical solution, I will use the theoretical solution. Why will I iterate? Obviously, I don't know the solution. So this T1, T2, T3 values, if I know, then I don't need to solve. Because I don't know them, I am using this method for solving them. N equations, N unknowns. So if there are N equations, I can write N equations like this and N unknowns. So you don't know the theoretical values. But your answer was somewhat correct. So what should I do? What parameter should I measure? Which will decrease with time, which should decrease with time, so that we can say that results are going towards the correct direction. Theoretical value is not known, so error is not known.
Errors in balancing equations, mass balance and remaining
That
balance.
can be one way. That can be one way, but there is a simple way. Okay, if I know what is x1k and what is x1k minus 1, so between two iteration, what is the change I can see? I can track. Okay. Similarly, x2k minus x2k minus 1. So current iteration value minus previous iteration value. Okay. So this is known as how much convergence is occurring. Okay. So if this value decreases with time, we say that we are going towards the correct solution. Means one iteration to next iteration, the change is less. Next iteration to next iteration, the change is even less. Okay. Ultimately, what will happen? From one iteration to the other iteration, the change will be very less. Okay. So we will assume that we have already reached very near to the correct solution and we will stop there. Is it clear to everyone, or shall I explain again? Previous iteration, current iteration minus previous iteration value. This term we need to track. and if this is smaller than a certain value, we call that we have reached the correct solution. Although it may not be exact correct solution, we will be very near to the correct solution. In iterative method, you cannot find the exact solution, unlike direct method. Is it clear? I will show you an example. I was hiding it just to see whether you are able to explain. Okay. So I will show you this example itself for this case. Okay. Now the question becomes, already I have shown it to you. Okay. How will you start the calculation? Means for k equal to 1, what will be the k minus 1 values? Somewhere you have to start, right? For k equal to 1, what will be the k minus 1 values? First iteration. What will you use as x2 and x1?
Sir, boundary conditions.
So because it can be internal values. Here I am writing x2, x1. There are n unknowns and n. So there are n unknowns and n equations. Here there are two unknowns, two equations. There are n unknowns, n equations. All the n unknown values you need to know for the first one, right? Because there will be n equations. So for n equations, first iteration, I want to know the previous iteration value. Obviously, there is no previous iteration. So what I have to do is I have to use a initial guess value. Okay. I have to guess the value. How will you guess the value? You have no idea. So you will just randomly guess certain value. Okay. So for example, our initial guess, because I have no idea about what is the solution, I am guessing that x1 equal to 0, x2 equal to 0. It has come to me as that this is the most easiest guess for me. 0, 0. If there is no other option, I will guess as 0, 0. Okay. Is it clear to everyone? So this is the initial guess. Randomly, you can also guess x1 equal to 100 or 1 million also. x2 equal to also 1 million you can guess. Or x1 equal to minus 1 million, x2 equal to plus 1 million, that also you can guess. There is no harm in guessing something. Okay. But obviously we see that the order of the values are smaller. So, okay, it will be very strange result if the results are of the order of millions and then the differences are only 6 and 13. Okay. So anyway, I am guessing 0, 0. You can start with 1, 1, 10, 10, 1, 0, 0, 1, 10, 0, whatever. This is the guess value. Okay. In real life scenario, there are certain hints for guessing. Okay, you don't have to blindly start. Now, who said boundary conditions? Who was the person who said boundary condition?
Sir, I said
What is your name?
Jagdish.
Okay. So this is actually a good point. Okay. Directly you cannot use boundary condition, but it gives you a hint. Say your boundary, say you are solving for velocity and you know that the inlet velocity at the boundary is 10 meter per second. Okay, 10 meter per second. So I know that the velocities will be of the order similar to 10 or it may be 20 or 5 or whatever, but it will be of the same order, somewhat near. Otherwise, it will be very strange that inlet velocity is 10 meter, suddenly it is becoming very much different, 1 meter or 0.001 meter. So it will be somewhere near. Okay. So I can take a guess value based on the boundary condition for all the grid points to be 10 meter per second. I can also take the guess value to be 0 meter per second, or I can take 10. Okay. Similarly, for temperature, I can take the room temperature or the initial temperature as the guess value. Okay, or the room temperature as the guess value. So I have certain hints also. But if there are no hints also, you can solve by taking arbitrary initial guess, 0 and 0 or something like that. Okay. So say I don't have any hints. So I start with 0, 0. So let us try to take a look at the steps involved. Okay. You can use a calculator also, but I have already written the values. So I will just quickly go through them. So 0th iteration value, this k is 0, is 0. So first iteration value will be x1 equal to 6 minus 0 by 2. So 6 by 2, which is 3. What will be value of x2? x2 is equal to 13 minus 0 by 3. So 13 by 3, which is 4.33333333. Ultimately, you have to truncate somewhere. So let us call 4.333. Okay, 3 digits. In actual calculation, we use either 8 digits or 16 digits if we use double precision. Okay. Then the second iteration value, x2 now is, what is the value of x2 now? For k equal to 2, we have to use k equal to 1 value. So a k equal to 1 we have already found, 4.33. For second iteration, 6 minus 4.333 by 2. Okay, 6 minus 4.333 is 1.667. So 1.667 by 2. Okay, 1.666666667. So it will become 0.8335 or something like that, 0.834. So that is our second iteration value. Because in this case we know the correct answer, we see that we are going towards the correct solution. Okay. For the second equation, what is this? Yes. 13 minus x1. x1 we have found to be 3. 13 minus 3 by 3. 13 minus 3 is 10. 10 by 3. So 3.333. Okay. After second iteration, we have found this value. Next iteration, again you do 6 minus x2. Previous x2 is 3.333. 6 minus 3.333 is 2.667. So 2.667 by 2, you get 1.334. Okay, 1.3335. Similarly, 13 minus 0.834 by 3. Okay, it will give you 4.056. You continue this. Okay, and in each step you see what is the difference between the previous step and the current step. Okay, 1.334 minus 0.834, so 0.5. In the first step, it was difference was used 2 point something. Now it is 0.5. After this, it is 0.3 something. So the difference is decreasing in each iteration. So there also first step it was 1. Now it was 0.7 something. Now it was 0.1 something. So it is decreasing. Okay. So then 1.056, 4.009. If we keep on calculating, ultimately you will reach 1.000. It may not be 1.000. It could have been 1.001 also, and 3.997. So if compared to previous value, we are seeing that previous value is 1.01 and now is 1.00. We don't know the correct solution is 1. Okay, that should be clear to us that we don't know the correct solution. What we are checking is that the change in both the equations is less than a certain value. Okay, our criteria was that the change in both the equations should be less than 0.1, 0.01. Okay, if this is our criteria. In the previous iteration, was this equation satisfying the criteria? 0.01, it was satisfying. Okay, the change was less than 0.01, but this equation was not satisfying the criteria. Here the change was 0.02, but in this equation the change is 0.01 for the first equation also, and for the second equation it is less than 0.01, it is 0.004. So both the equations are satisfying our criteria. So we are saying that this is a converse solution. This final solution is known as converse solution, and the criteria is known as convergence criteria. Okay, the criteria is known as convergence criteria, and the solution is known as converse solution. What is the physical meaning of this convergence criteria? Physical meaning of the convergence criteria is that this is the maximum error we want to allow. Okay, this is the maximum error that we are willing to allow. So in this case, we are maximum error we are willing to allow is 0.01. Fortunately, we have reached the correct solution, but we were maximum error that we were willing to allow was 0.01. Okay, so our convergence criteria is 0.01. In your CFD solvers, in codes or in ANSYS Fluent or in other software, you will see that there is a convergence criteria 10 to the power minus 3, 10 to the power minus 4, 10 to the power minus 6, like this we give. Okay, this convergence criteria is the same as this. Okay, so it means that there also we go through iterations like this. So after certain number of iterations, your difference is less than the convergence criteria, your solver says that now your solution has converged, and it will only happen if this is true for all the grid points. If at all the grid points the convergence criteria is satisfied, then only we will reach convergence. If we reach convergence in n minus one grid point, but one grid point is not showing convergence, then also we will not have converged solution. The algorithm will continue. That is what we see in software. We will see that sometimes there is no convergence. Convergence is not happening if even after 1000 iterations also. Okay. So sometimes what will happen, convergence may be very slow. It may take 2000 or 5000. We have seen in our problems. When there are very non-linear problems, it may take 2000 or 5000 iterations. In a single time step, you need 5000 iterations for convergence. If you use less number of iterations, like 20 iterations, the results will be wrong. Okay. Sometimes students just use the default value. Default value is ANSYS is given as 20. So if you use 20, you will not get the converse solution. You have to increase the number of iterations, maximum number of allowable iterations, and you have to decrease the convergence criteria to get the accurate solution. I can use 10 to the power minus 4, 10 to the power minus 5, or 10 to the power minus 6. If I use 10 to the power minus 2, I will get very inaccurate solution, 1% error, okay, which is very high. So typically we use 10 to the power minus 6 or 10 to the power minus 5 for our solutions. Sometimes 10 to the power minus 4 is also acceptable. So this method of iteration is known as Jacobi method. Any questions on this? You can see that the iteration is very slow. We are slowly going towards the correct solution. Okay, we are slowly going towards the correct solution in this method. And if my convergence criteria was 10 to the power minus 6, we will need large number of iterations to go towards the correct solution. Here our convergence criteria was very poor, 10 to the power minus 2. If it was 10 to the power minus 6, I will need much larger number of iterations, okay, to go towards the correct solution. But I will reach the correct solution. Okay, so for n equations and n unknowns, this n equations can be represented. We have already seen this. N equations can be represented in this form. Ax equal to b. So at equal to k is nothing but ax equal to b. Okay. A is the coefficient matrix, x is the n unknowns, x vector has n unknowns, and b is the known vector, okay, of this form. Please ask me questions if you don't follow anything. I am very happy to answer questions. Okay, I want to answer more questions. So x equal to b. Okay, so each equation can be written in this form. J is equal to 1 to n, summation of j equal to 1 to n. Aij xj is equal to bi. Let us try to understand this equation. Okay, Aij xj. I is the vertical index and j is the horizontal index for this case. Okay, and for this case j is the vertical index. So Aij means if this is the first one, this into this plus this into this plus this into this. Okay, fourth value into this value is equal to this first value k1. Okay, so b1 t1 plus c1 t2 plus 0 t3 plus 0 t4, whatever is the value, is equal to k1. Okay, so this is the form of the ith equation. So I have n equations, so I will have n equations of this form, where what index I have to change the equation? Which index I have to change the equation? For n equal to 1, sorry, for I equal to 1, which unknown will be given by the equation? x1. Okay, so I is the index which will change for each of the equation. Okay, so this equation can be written n times with n different values of I. Okay, this is for I equal to 1, so I equal to 2 I can write. So this is for the general I. Okay, so I will have n equations like this. Is it clear to everyone? And in each of these n equations, I will have n terms on the left hand side, n summation terms. Or is there any confusion? Same as this. Okay, same as this matrix. Summation of Aij xj for j equal to 1 to n is equal to bi, where I varies from 1 to n. So n equations and n unknowns. Okay. So this now I can write as in this form. Okay, in this form I want to write. So for the ith iteration, so not for the ith iteration, for the ith variable, I can write when j is equal to I. Okay, when j is equal to I, this will become aii xi. Okay, so I take that value to the left hand side, aii xi to the, I keep it on the left hand side. All the other variables I take to the right hand side. Okay, so aii xi for the kth iteration, let us forget the k for this moment. Aii xi is equal to bi minus summation of j is equal to 1 to n aij xj where one term is missing. Which term is missing? The AII-XI term is missing. What is the AII-XI term? When j is equal to I. Okay. So j is equal to I term is missing. So I can write this as AII-XIK is equal to BI minus summation of j I equal to 1 to n, j not equal to I. Aij xj k minus 1. Okay. For I is equal to 1 to n. So I will have n equations like this for I equal to 1, I equal to 2 like this, and n unknowns. Okay. Now what will be the iteration process? I will use, so each of these equations have n minus 1 unknowns in this on the right hand side. But I will use known values from the previous iteration, from the k minus 1 iteration, like we were doing here. Okay. Known values from the previous iteration to find the kth iteration value. So from n equations and n unknowns, I will get the n values. Then I will go to the next iteration, k plus 1th iteration. Again, I will use the known values to find the next iteration value and proceed like this. Okay, so ultimately for all these n equations, we have to check the convergence criteria at each iteration. After each iteration, we check the convergence criteria. If it is satisfied for all the equations, we say that the solution is converged. Otherwise, we continue calculating. Okay, until we reach convergence. Any questions on the Jacobi method? So there can be chances, okay, for these iterative methods that the solution does not converge to the correct solution. Okay, there is a lot of mathematical theory behind it. I don't want to go into those theories. Okay, but the convergence can go towards the opposite direction. It depends on something called saddle points and points like that. Okay, we will not go into the maths of that, but instead of going towards the correct direction, if my initial guess is wrong, let me just, I will not go into the maths, but physically I want to show you what is the, sometimes what is the issue. Okay. In a different way, in a statistical way I will show, but the similar thing also holds true here. So say you have a unknown like this. Okay. Just I am randomly saying some function like this, and this is the unknown value. Okay. Unknown value x1. Okay. Sometimes what happens is that if I take the initial guess, somewhere here or here, okay, I will gradually go towards the correct direction. Okay, and I will get the correct solution. If my initial guess is here, I have taken a very different initial case. So it will happen that I will go towards this direction. Okay, and I will not get the correct solution in that case. So in that case, we call it as that the solution has diverged, or it may happen that solution has converged to a wrong value. Generally, solution will not converge to a wrong value. Solution will diverge. Solution will go towards it will go away from the correct value. Okay, it will go away from the correct value. As you can see, next iteration will give very different value. Next iteration will give very different value. We will go away from the correct value. This is known as divergence. Solutions are diverging. Sometimes you will see in your calculation that temperature is blowing up. Temperature is 100, 400, then 1,000, 10,000, 1 million, then it goes to some very large value. It has blown up. Okay, or the errors are increasing with time. Actually, errors is not the correct term, but the differences are increasing with iteration. Okay, differences are increasing with iteration. So this is known as divergence. This also you can see in CFD software or using coding. Okay, very important. So it is not that always this will converge to the correct solution. That is one important point. Second is that the rate of convergence depends on the initial guess also. If I had taken 1 and 1, luck would have favored us because the first value is 1. Although I would have moved away from 1. Okay, but my convergence could have been faster. Okay, if I had taken 1 and 1, because I don't know the correct value is 1, what will be the first iteration value of x1? 6 minus 1 by 2. So it will be 2.5. Okay, we are actually moving away from the correct value. From 1 we are going to 2.5, but we will again come back to the correct value. Okay, after a few iterations, but the number of iterations may be less. So the initial guess also plays a part in the number of iterations, but it does not. If you go to the converse solution, your converse solution will be correct, whatever is the initial guess. Now, if luck is bad, you can go to a divergence also. That may happen. So, otherwise, uh, if you converge to a solution, it should be correct solution. Okay. So this is known as Jacobi method. So we can improve this method somewhat just by a slight modification to the method. A small modification can improve the convergence rate drastically. Okay. That small modification of this method is known as Gauss-Seidel method. Gauss-Seidel method. Okay. I will keep the Jacobi method open here and we will discuss the Gauss-Seidel method. Any question on the Jacobi method?
No, sir.
Yes or no? I could not hear properly. No questions, huh? Okay. So Gauss-Seidel method, what change we are going to do? We will follow the exact same pattern. Okay. So 2x1 plus x2 equal to 6, x1 plus 3x2 equal to 13. Two equations and two unknowns. We can write this equation as x1 equal to 6 minus x2 by 2. Same thing we can write here. And x2 equals to 13 minus x1 by 3. But instead of taking for both the equations the old iteration value, we will take the latest value, whatever is the latest value available to us, not the old iteration value. What is the difference between the latest value and the old iteration value? For some cases, we will know the new iteration value also. Okay. For example, I can write this equation as x1k is equal to 6 minus x2k minus 1 by 2. So I will know the previous iteration x2. By knowing the previous iteration x2, I can calculate the current iteration x1. Okay. Now, because the current iteration x1 is already known, why should I use the previous iteration x1? Like, why should I use x1k minus 1? I can use x1k itself. Right. I can use x1k itself instead of x1k minus 1 because x1k is known to me. So this small modification gives us much faster convergence. So x2k will be 13 minus x1k divided by 3. Okay, instead of k minus 1. So this is the iteration for Gauss-Seidel method. Okay, you will have to use the latest values. If I have n unknowns and n equations, for the first equation, I will have all the other values from the previous iteration. For the second equation, I will have one value, which first value calculated already from the new iteration, and all the n minus 2 values from the previous iteration. Like this, we continue. Okay. For the last value, we use all the current values because all the current values are known. Let us take a look at the iterations for this case. x1 equal to 0, again our initial guess is 0, 0. So after one iteration, 6 minus 0 by 2, so 3, and 13 minus 0 by 3, 3.33. So no, not 13 minus 0 by 3. Remember, we will use the latest value, 13 minus 3 by 3. So 3.333. Okay, latest value is 3. Already we have calculated 3. 3.333. Okay. So I will keep this also open. Now, once we know 3.333, this we will use here. Okay, 6 minus 3.333 divided by 2. So it gives us 1.334. And because this is the latest value, we will use 13 minus 1.334 divided by 3. This gives us 3.889. You can see that convergence is moving faster. It is moving in this pattern compared to this. 1.334 and 3.889. In the next iteration, we will get 1.056, 3.981, 1.010, 3.997. After one more iteration, we will get 1.002, 3.999. Okay, so after this, we say that convergence criteria is satisfied. Our convergence criteria is 10 to the power minus 2. It is getting satisfied here. So after 5 iterations, still our convergence criteria is getting satisfied instead of 8 iterations. So we have converged to a to near the correct solution very quickly, much quicker than the Jacobi method. It is not very quick, but still quicker than the Jacobi method. Okay. So this is the modification, and with this modification, the method is known as Gauss-Seidel method. Okay. Again, all the whatever we have discussed holds true here. We can again go towards the wrong solution also. It will depend on the initial guess value, but in most cases, it should go towards the correct value. Okay. So see how important this initial guess and everything else is. Randomly in Fluent and Sys and other places, we just put something, whatever the software is saying. But in real life, actually, these values are also quite important in going towards the correct solution. We need to know the fundamentals to actually solve a problem. Sometimes we blindly think, oh, our results are not converging. What can be the issue? Let me change the mesh. Let me do this. Let me do that. Okay. But once you know in depth what is the fundamentals behind this, you can think about lot of things. What can go wrong? After this course, you will be much in a better position to understand if your results are not coming properly using a software or a code, what can go wrong? Okay. What are the things you can change? So faster convergence. So for n equations and n unknowns, again I can write the equations in this form. J from 1 to n summation aij xj is equal to bi. But now I will divide this into two groups. Known values means current iteration values and previous iteration values. So all the values where I is means the index is less than I are current iteration values, and where the index is greater than I are the previous iteration values. So I can write xik as summation j equal to 1 to I minus 1. Up to I minus 1 is the current iteration values, because this we have already calculated. Minus aij, okay, minus aij by aii, this, okay, xjk, because this is already known, plus from j equal to I plus 1 to n minus aij by aii xj k minus 1, previous iteration value, because from this value onward we don't know. Okay. So using current iteration value and previous iteration value, we will be able to find out xik. Okay. So if you don't understand this equation, it's fine, because you can just take a look at this and you can understand what is the method. Okay. How this is proceeding based on these two equations. If there are three equations also, you should be able to do. Okay. If I give a three equation and want you to solve three iterations of Gauss-Seidel method, say in the exam I state like this: solve three iterations of Gauss-Seidel method for these three equations to get the three unknown values. You should be able to do this. Okay. Or two iterations. Obviously, I will not tell you to solve for 100 iterations. Okay, there is no point. But I want to see your understanding. So I may say that solve for two iterations or one iteration. Okay, just to check your understanding. And you should be able to do that. Any questions? No questions? Okay. I will show you the same example again. Okay. But we will formulate the equations in a different way this time. Same equations: 2x plus 1, x2 equal to 6, and x1 plus 3x2 equal to 13. Okay. Same equation, same unknowns. Correct solutions are also same, obviously, 1 and 4. But now I will use the second equation for calculating x1 and the first equation for calculating, because there is no first and second equation. These equations could have been in the other order also. I don't know, because I have stated like this, you know here. But I could have given that x1 plus 3x2 equal to 13 and 2x1 plus x2 equal to 6 in a jumbled up order. So there is no first and second equation. It could have been in any order. So I will be using this equation, second equation, for calculating x1. So from the second equation, x1 is equal to 13 minus 3x2. Okay, x1k is equal to 13 minus 3x2k minus 1. And from this equation, x2k is equal to 6 minus 2x1k. x2k is equal to 6 minus 2x1k. Okay, just a defined form. Okay, here I have used a defined form. This also should give us correct solution. Let us try to find the solution. Our initial guess is again 0, 0. Okay, so 13 minus 3 into 0 is 13. So x1, so first iteration x1 value is 13. What about this? Because this is 13, x1 is 13, 6 minus 2 into 13. So 6 minus 26 is equal to minus 20. So this value is minus 20. Now this value is minus 20. So for the next iteration, I will use 13 into minus 3, 13 minus 3 into minus 20. So 13 plus 60. So 73. Now this equation 6 minus 2 into 73. So minus 140. You can see that we are going very wrong here. Okay. Our values are drastically increasing. It seems like there is no hope of going towards the correct solution. So for the next iteration, it will be minus 407 and 820. So it will blow up. The solution will blow up. Blowing up means that it will diverge. It will go to very large value, 10 to the power 4, 10 to the power 5, then go to infinity. Okay. This is solutions have diverged. Okay. This is known as solutions have diverged. It has not gone towards the correct solution. We have not changed much. We have taken the same initial guess. We have taken the same equations, but only we have this for the iterations we have taken different equations. Instead of these two forms, we have taken the other equations. Okay. Otherwise, it should be same. We should have gone towards the same solution, but we have diverged and we have blown up the solution. Okay. So it is not that you will always get the same solution or correct solution with the correct initial guess also. It will also depend on the how you are iterating. What is the equations for iterating? Okay. So in this case, solutions are diverged. Okay. And so this is also gives us some insight. Okay, when it can diverge. So is it clear to everyone that what has happened here? I have not stated any criteria where it will diverge, but luckily to us, there is a criteria. So somebody has already devised mathematically a criteria which gives us an idea about whether a solution will diverge or not. Okay. So if our equations follow those pattern for that criteria, we can assure that solutions are not going to diverge. Okay. Let us take a look at the criteria. This criteria is known as Scarborough criteria. Okay. Very important in CFD, Scarborough criteria. I will have the equations open here. Okay. The diverged equation. Scarborough criteria. So what is the criteria? It states that if we have a discretized equation of this form, some coefficient into some unknown APTP is equal to summation of A and B TNB plus B. Okay. What is this P and NB? P is the current grid point value and A and B are the neighboring grid points. So P can be say I, this will be I plus 1 and I minus 1 like this. Or P, if it is 2D problem, P will be Ij, this will be Ij plus 1, Ij minus 1. Okay. So in general, in CFD, whether it is finite difference or finite volume, our equation will be of this form. So some value APTP is equal to summation A and B TNB plus B. Okay. Same thing here also. APTP, so APTP here is AP is 1. Okay, this is the unknown is equal to B is 13 and summation A and B TNB. So there is only one TNB x2 and A and B is minus 3. Okay, like this. For the second equation, AP is 1, the unknown is x2, B is 6 and A and B is minus 2. Okay. If we have more unknowns, we will have more number of terms. A1 T1, A2 T2, A plus A3 T3 like this. Okay. So in general, we will have an equation APTP is equal to summation A and B TNB plus B. You can see this equation. Okay, it's the same equation. I will show you the equation form. Okay, it's the same equation. AII is equal to BI minus summation GI from A1 to N AIJ XJ. Okay, so here AP is AII. Okay, TP is this unknown and B is this B, and summation A and B TNB is this term. Okay, all the neighboring values. So if this is the form of the equation, there exists a sufficient condition for convergence. What is the sufficient convergence criteria? Summation of the absolute value of this coefficients. summation of the absolute value of these coefficients divided by summation, divided by the absolute value of this coefficient P. It should be less than equal to 1 for all equations and should be less than 1 for at least one equation. Okay, less than equal to 1 for all equations and at least less than 1 for one equation. Means it cannot be equal to 1 for all equations. If it is equal to 1 for all equations but at least less than 1 for one equation, then we are okay. If this is satisfied, so we will not go into the treatment how this has been derived, but we will just note that if this is satisfied, we will obtain a correct solution. Our solution will not diverge. Our solution is going to converge. Okay. If this criteria is satisfied, whatever is our initial guess value, our solution is going to converge. Okay. It may take more time to converge depending on the initial guess value, but our solution is going to converge. This is known as Scarborough criteria. Okay, and the important thing to note here is that this is a sufficient condition, not a necessary condition. You know the difference between necessary and sufficient conditions, right? What is the difference between necessary and sufficient condition?
Sir, if it is satisfied, then it will surely converge. But if it does not satisfy, then we are not sure whether it will converge or not.
Correct. Good. If it is satisfied, we will surely converge. But if it is not satisfied, we may still converge. Okay, it is not a necessary condition. It is not necessary. Okay, we may still converge, but we may diverge also. We are not sure whether it will converge or diverge. We may or may not converge. So necessary condition would have been a condition where if it is not satisfied, it will not converge at all. But in this case, it is not necessary. Okay, but it is sufficient. If we can satisfy it, we will surely converge. Okay, let us go back to our conditions. Okay, let us go back to our equations. So this is known as Scarborough criteria and very important for us in CFD. Okay. Let us take a look at this equation. The equation that has diverged. Let us take a look at the coefficients. For the first equation, so we have two equations. For both equations, this condition needs to be satisfied, and for one equation, for at least one equation, this condition is satisfied or not, we will check. Okay. Summation A and B, summation of absolute value of A and B. Absolute value of A and B is 3. Okay, I hope you can see this. Absolute value of A and B is 3. So summation of this is 3 because there are no other A and B's, only one value. Okay, 3. By absolute value of AP is 1. So 3 by 1 is 3. So the first equation is not satisfied. There is only one. So okay, so this one equation. So first, for the first equation, this condition is not satisfied. Okay. What about the second condition? So even if one is not satisfied, it means that there is a chance that it will not converge. Okay. All the equations it should have been satisfied. But first equation itself is not satisfied. What about the second equation? What is the value of this for the second equation? Can you tell me quickly? Very quickly, tell me what is the value of this Scarborough criteria this for the second equation.
2.
So it is also not satisfied. Okay. So mod of -2 is 2. 2 divided by 1. So 2. So unfortunately, it has not satisfied this criteria. So now the solution could have converged because this is not a necessary condition, but our luck was bad and it did not converge. Okay. But if we follow a sufficient condition, let us take a look at our previous iteration scheme. This is our previous iteration scheme. What is the value of this for the first equation? What is the value of this for the first equation?
0.5.
0.5, correct, good. Minus 0.5, some means mod of minus 0.5 is 0.5 divided by 1, so 0.5. Okay. What about the second equation? What is the value?
0.33.
0.3. Okay, so the same equations I have written in a different form, and now this Scarborough criteria is satisfied, 0.5 and 0.33. So it guarantees us that our solution should converge. Okay, it guarantees us that our solution should converge. Okay, and that is what we have found, that solution has converged. You can take other initial values also and you can try that. Okay, it should converge. So this is a very important criteria in CFD, Scarborough criteria, and needs to be followed. Okay, so lot of insight you will gain gradually when you are later on, if in industry or in somewhere in your BTP project you are solving CFD problems. These insights you may not remember all of them, but you will remember the gist of it or the essence, and you will see that it helps you in solving the problems or debugging the problems in a much easier way. Instead of blindly trying to find why this problem is not getting correct solution, you will know what to change, what parameters to change. Okay, particularly while writing a code, this is very useful. So then, okay, so is this clear? Jacobi method, Gauss-Seidel method, and Scarborough criteria, or is there any questions on this? I guess there are no questions here. Okay, so I will go to the next method in the next class, line by line TDMA. Okay, in the next class we will see this third iterative method, which is the most useful method. Okay, which is much faster than the other two methods which we have discussed, and this is a modification of the TDMA method that was used for 1D. Okay, so we will discuss this in the next class. So I will stop the recording here.